Hello, Cinsanity, and welcome to this episode of our podcast. We have Mark Newell back on again from Tecumseh. Last time we talked a lot about land management. This time we're going to go strictly with food plots. We're going to talk about the planting process, what things you should look at to put in the ground this fall, and making a plan for next spring. So what do you say we get this thing started? I'm not going to give you a spiel of a commercial on this podcast because I hate it when other people do it, so let's keep it simple. For all your fall food plot needs, our friends over at Tecumseh have given us a 10% discount code for you all to use. It is Tecumseh10. That's Tecomate 10. Go look it up and get whatever fall food plot products you need. I promise you won't be disappointed. Mark, this is my dad, John. John, this is Mark.
Mark, great to meet you.
Hey, Mr. John. How are you, sir?
I am living the dream.
Amen. I like it. Good deal.
Yeah. I always get the same response.
That's true, though.
All right. So, barring our issues getting this thing up and running, where you at with all your food plots, Mark?
Fall food plots?
Yeah, man. You started yet? You just...
Heck no. We ain't even thought about it. Man, we're in Mississippi.
Yeah.
We don't start planting at the earliest middle of September. Most of my stuff I don't do until October, 1st October, something like that. So sometimes you can get them in early just depending on weather, but typically September is brutal dry. So we don't start till much later. Of course, in Mississippi you have much longer growing season, and that's usually a pretty good time to get it in late September, early October. Yeah. And we have gotten them in 1st of November because there was just no rain. So, and they still grow. You don't get the tonnage that you would like, but it is what it is. Yep.
Yeah. We're Labor Day weekend is when it's going to be this year.
Okay.
That's just when a little different cycle.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I know in our farm in Kentucky, I mean, we have done them like that last week in August before, but it's usually that first week in September when we do them up there too. So.
Yep. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and start with this, Mark. So we talked about last podcast. We talked quite a bit more about land management than food plots specifically. But since we're going into the fall planting season, do you think you can give us a quick overhead view or recap on kind of the planning process you would do so people out there know, and you can speak to it in regards to people with the proper heavy machinery and people that don't have that, and you're kind of just finding a hole in the woods and trying to just get dirt to show to get seed on it.
Yeah, and I'd like to put a caveat on that. If you think, Clayton, where we started, when we first bought the farm we have now, it was a situation where we would find a patch either on a ridge somewhere or, down in the bottoms. We'd take a weed eater, get all the brush out of the way, and whatever we could do with a simple ATV, that's what we did. And so it was, how shall I say, less sophisticated than, having tractors available to us now and rotavators and sprayers and all that stuff. So, I think it's helpful to start with food plot for dummies and work our way up.
Yeah, sure. So, and same here. I mean, I've planted them every kind of way known to man, from a nice air-conditioned cab tractor, no-till drill, perfect farming situation to, like you said, a weed eater at best and a rake and a garden rake. That's all you had. So there's a lot of guys out there that, and you're not fixing to do an acre or more with something like that, but you're talking quarter acre or less, and there's an awful lot of food plots that are planted out there, and that's the size that they are, 1/8 of an acre, even 1/16 of an acre, just little small patches, little small roads. And what you're trying to do is to get the best seed-to-soil contact as you possibly can with whatever equipment that you have. Doesn't matter what it is, from a tractor to a weed eater to a rake, you want the best seed-to-soil contact that you can get. You want that seed to be in contact with the ground the best way that you can. So if you're just out there, you got a little small spot, you don't have any equipment, you may not even have an ATV. You may have a hand sprinter and a hand seeder and hand tools for that matter, and you can still plant a good food plot. Now it's going to be more work on you, but you can still get that done. And one of the things that I like to do in that scenario is even if you got a small gallon pump-up sprayer, go in and spray, that food plot wherever it may be, and try to kill whatever's there. That helps tremendously. Do that a week or two before you start the planting process. And then what you can do then, once that stuff dies out, take your hand spreader, go over that field. It may be still stuff that's knee high, but it's all dead. Take that hand spreader and go over that entire area with whatever seed that you're using. I would use a blended seed like Tecumseh's Maxitract or Greenfield, because it's got all kinds of different things in there, from the wheat, oats, to the clovers, to the brassicas. All of that stuff's going to be in there, so something's going to grow. So I want to throw a lot of seed and throw more seed than what you need in that particular situation. Maybe not too much brassicas, but definitely more wheat, more clover, that kind of thing, probably twice as much as you would think. And then once you spread that, then go over it with your weed eater. And what you're going to do essentially is you're going to help that seed to settle down to the soil, and then you're going to cover it with that thatch layer of dead grass and things of that nature, and then you're good to go. That is a great way to do a fall food plot. I wouldn't do that during the summer because you're going to have all kinds of different competing things coming up. But if you'll do a fall food plot that way, you can actually have a pretty good food plot. That same technique, you can call it the poor man's no-till, so to speak. You can do that same technique with a big food plot and a tractor and a mower or clipper or whatever you want to call it, bush hog. We call it bush hogs here in the South. And regardless what brand it is, we always call them bush hogs. So, and you can do the same thing. You essentially spray it, let that thatch layer die, go over the top of it, broadcast it over it a little heavier than normal, and then cover that with the bush hog. So it doesn't, that technique works on small food plots all the way up to the big food plot, so just depending on how you're doing it. So even if you got a little small food plot, all you need is a pump-up sprayer, some seed, and a weed eater, and you can plant a food plot.
Now, when you do that with the larger equipment like a tractor and you bush hog over it, what's your germination rate, we'll call it? Is it still pretty good?
Your germination rate's going to be less because, again, it's not getting that perfect seed-to-soil contact. All right, so that's why I'm saying up that planting rate, by sometimes if you double it, it's okay on fall type seeds. But at least that and a half anyway. So whatever the planting rate is, if you'll add a half of that to it, normally your germination rate is probably 70%, 65-70%, which is not terrible. So, but the trick is you got to make sure you terminate it. Now, you can do that in the fall and not terminate it and just broadcast it and clip over it, and you'll get some stuff to grow. But if you terminate everything that's there and make sure it's all good and dead, and then you broadcast that seed over it and then clip it with that thatch layer covering the top of it, it's already dead and starting to decompose as it is, standing up. And it actually works pretty well. So. And what that thatch layer will do, it'll help hold moisture. And, so if you get a rain on top of it or whatever, and you already got moisture in the ground, so that's a cool, it's just a different way to do that. But, again, to answer your question, germination rate, 60-70%, somewhere around in there. That's why I'm saying add a little bit more seed to it when you put it out.
Yep.
And I think that cadence is important to understand because I don't know that we even understood it 15, 20 years ago, that you terminate it or do your roundup, spread the seed, and then cut it so that you have the thatch.
Yep.
I think, a lot of people, they'll terminate it, cut it, rake it, then drop the seed.
Yep. And that works fine too, but but if you're not going to till it, that's the best way to go. Now, if you're going to till it or no-till it, now if you're going to run in a no-till drill in, I like to clip it clean just because that drill runs through there, a little better, and you don't get as much junk hung up in it. But even with the drill, you can run that drill through and not even clip it. A lot of folks do that. Again, it depends on how thick it is, depends on how tall it is. But there's a lot of guys that don't have a drill, and I'm going to say most people that are talking here, and I know you guys use a drill some. I rented one a couple weeks ago to get my last summer plot in here. So, and the drills work great, but let's be honest, 99% of your food plotters ain't finna have a drill. So I don't even speak to a drill, and somebody just asks, specifically for that. So if you want to do this no-till process, you're exactly right. You need to, the clipping part's the last thing that you do. And we haven't even mentioned soil amenities like lime, fertilizer, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of basic things that you can do with lime fertilizer. If you've not done a soil test, if you're going to talk to any major seed guy, soil test should be number one. Then with that soil test, you know exactly how much and what type fertilizer to use. You know how much lime to use. But as a standard, across the board, without doing it, if you will figure about a ton of lime to the acre, sometimes 2 tons of lime to the acre, and then about, just say, a balanced fertilizer of, say, triple 13, triple 19, something of that effect, about 250 pounds of that per acre. If you're doing smaller than that, then you just do the math and whatever that works out to be. But some kind of balanced fertilizer, triple 13, triple 15, triple 19, something of that effect at about 250 pounds an acre, and that will help you on that particular side of things. And 2, here's another deal with fertilizer. Let me just throw this out there as well, and we haven't even talked about the process. I know you mentioned it earlier, but the process is important. Usually fertilizer, lime, that kind of stuff goes first. So I want to put fertilizer out, and even before I disc up the soil, I want the fertilizer out, and if I'm running a disc, I want to disc that fertilizer in. So if we were doing this no-till process, the same situation, I want to put the fertilizer out, then the seed out, then clip over the top of it. When you're clipping over the top of it, it really doesn't matter if the seed and fertilizer is out at the same time. But you don't want to throw the fertilizer out last because it's sitting up on top of that thatch layer. Again, you want that seed-to-soil contact both with the fertilizer and the seed. So on a normal process, let me just give you this particular picture. On a normal process of food plot planting, by most everybody, I'm sorry, I'm getting dinged over here. On a normal food plot process that I like to do, and I do this more times than not, is I go in, I spray everything, kill it down. Sometimes I don't even spray it. I just bush hog everything down or clip it all down. I usually allow that grass to die, though, because green grass is difficult to disc through. That's why I'd rather spray it first and get a termination. The next week, we'll take that disc and, try to work it in. But before I even disc, depending on the soil, I want that fertilizer out. So I'll get a fertilizer buggy, depending on the size, get the fertilizer out. Then I'm going to disc that soil up really good. And what that does, that puts that fertilizer in the soil at different depths of the soil. So I don't want it sitting on top, because if you put it on top, which a lot of people do, and you just get a little bit of rain and it's hot and humid, that fertilizer just creates almost like a little wall that sits on top of that soil, and it's not good for the seeds in that way. So I want it worked into the soil really well, so as that plant grows, it's getting fertilizer when it starts to grow, but it gets fertilizer throughout the growing season as well, as that plant, that root system goes into and goes down into the ground. So get the soil situated right. Once it's disced right, your fertilizer's disced up in the soil, then you put your seed out and go from there. So, and there's a lot of other ways you can do that as well. You can run a drag over it to clean it up if you have time to do that. I like doing that, knocking the clods out and all of that kind of stuff, and having that clean seed bed. Then put the seed out, run a drag over it again, or a cultipacker, something to that effect. The cleaner it is, the better seed-to-soil contact. That's just what I keep kind of coming back to. The better seed-to-soil contact that you get, the better food plot that you're going to have.
Well, to your point on the lime, we got that new piece we added, and I did soil sample tests. I sent them off to the county extension office, and it came back, and everything was right about 2 to 3 tons an acre on lime, and same thing with right about in line with fertilizer in regards to the numbers you gave. And that's stuff that I'm guessing hasn't been treated with lime or fertilizer in a decade.
Probably a long time, yeah.
Now, when you talk about fertilizer, is there an advantage to pellets versus liquid?
Well, the bit, depending on when you say, so there is a foliar liquid, and then there's just a straight liquid that's similar to the pelletized stuff. So it depends on what you're talking about. Most of the time, liquid is cheaper if you have the spray unit to be able to do it, especially if you do foliar. So what foliar liquid fertilizer, which most of it is that you see on the market today for your average food plotter to buy, essentially you allow the food plot to germinate and come up, and then you go over the top of it with that foliar. And you don't have to have as much because it's 100% intake from that plant, of that fertilizer to that plant. So I like the foliar stuff and I like the liquid stuff because the pelletized, and I still use primarily pelletized stuff because that's the easiest thing to get and it's the easiest to put out. So that's the advantage of the pelletized stuff. It's a little easier to be able to put out, at least for me, with the equipment that I have. But if all you have is a sprayer, if you have a good spray unit, which you can buy pretty cheaply now at Tractor Supply for your ATV, there's great advantages for that liquid. So the liquids are just, are a little bit different. So, and most of the time the liquid's a little bit cheaper, depending on how you apply it.
Okay, well, since we're on this topic of spraying stuff, we did actually just go get UTV sprayer just for the new piece we added. It's easier to access it with a UTV than it is taking the tractor all the way over there. It's quicker, time saving. But what's up with this Sportsman Research stuff? I know I was texting you about it the other day. Can you kind of explain a couple of those things and how they work?
Well, we can go into all kind of geeky biology stuff on this kind of thing. But one of the hottest trends, I guess you would say, in the food plot world is called regenerative agriculture. And essentially that's not disking, not using herbicides, not using fertilizer. It is planting food and I'm not even going to go into that whole entire process, and there's different levels of that as well that you can still do some of that. But basically what you're trying to do with that process is generate and produce good soil bacteria, essentially. And there's all kind of different bacteria, as we call them, bugs, that are in the soil. And that's one thing that a lot of the pelletized type fertilizer will kill off because of the salts, because all of that stuff is basically a salt type based fertilizer. And a lot of that fertilizer over time will start killing out some of those bugs and that kind of thing.
Does that have the same effect when you use like vinegar as a form of Roundup instead of using the chemicals? You know what I'm talking about, the vinegar solution that people make now?
Yeah, it will some. It will some. Sure will. Anything like that, I mean, these are microbacteria and they're highly susceptible to be killed out. So even when you round up an area off and kill all of the plant life, well, you've just killed all of the food for the bacteria as well, even at the soil level. So there's a lot of that bacteria that's killed off that way as well. So, and that's a common thing in even the agricultural world. There's a lot of those bacterias that were naturally in the soil that's great for those plants that are not there anymore, and that's why they're going back to that regenerative agriculture. There's even a process in the commercial ag that's doing some of that as well. So go now until this new product from Sportsman Research, and they have it in a couple different ways. My favorite one is called the Plot Max, and now you can get that in a powder, and it's essentially a seed coat. And what's in that seed coat is a bacteria. It's live bacteria that you're putting right back into the soil, and that helps tremendously. So essentially, it's not the same thing, but the end result is very, very similar to the entire regenerative agricultural push, but you're basically putting that in there when you put that seed coat on the seed.
What's the difference between it and the spray? The Trophy Max spray.
Okay, so you have two different things. It's the exact same thing, same bacteria. So you have a powder seed coat that's so much easier to mix in your seed blend. You just take that one little powder pack, open it up, put it in there, stir it around a little bit, and you're fine. The other one is the same thing, but it's in a spray, and that was the initial product that they had before they come up with the other. And you just spray that over it, and then you mix it up as well. So it's just a liquid seed coat. The other is a powder seed coat. Then you have a foliar spray that you basically put in a UTV. So you didn't treat the seed when you planted it. The first two are seed treatments. The other is a foliar treatment. So you just spray over the plants just like you would a fertilizer with the foliar application, and that gets that bacteria through the plant and into the soil.
Gotcha. And then I think they also have the Turfy Max micronutrient.
Yeah, it's some micronutrients. There's several different micronutrient products that are out there on the market. This is not something new. It's been out for some time. There's a company called Delta Ag's been making stuff for a long time as well. But it's essentially the nutrients that you don't get in fertilizer. So there's all kinds of different elements and nutrients and things of that nature that plants need that you don't get in standard fertilizer. So that's what that micronutrient. It's micronutrients that are there that help those plants as well. So I usually spray that directly onto the soil. So as soon as you work it up, disc it up right before you plant, just spray that all over the ground and then put your seed down.
Perfect. Cool.
Yep.
So now you threw my whole cadence out of whack.
No, yep. I did. He didn't. I did.
Yeah. So I mean, there's just so many different ways, to do all this, and and there's so many different new techniques and new products that are out here, like this stuff from Sportsman's Research that's just adding things to the soil. Now, this does not necessarily replace fertilizer. You can still fertilize, get that soil nutrition up. But what this does, whatever bacteria that's been killed out through whatever process over time, this helps put that live bacteria in there that helps that plant growth on a completely different level than the plant nutrients that are there.
Can it replace fertilizing?
It can. It's possible. In theory, it would. And then over time, again, that's the whole regenerative ag process, is over time, you're going to naturally produce the nutrients and things that plant needs. But on a short period of time, no, it's not going to replace it. It's just going to help that plant grow in a way that it's never been able to grow before.
Okay. The only reason I ask is because while technically I don't think Clayton and I fall under the category of weekend warriors. I mean, a lot of people are weekend warriors. We too are limited on the time we can get to the farm. So when we do get to the farm to plant food plots and the like, we have to be pretty methodical and consolidated in our efforts to ensure that we get the process done completely. And of course, as you well know, all of it's contingent upon weather.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just back up a second. So let's go back to planting food plots. All right. Number one is develop a plan. All right. Any food plotter that's out there listening to this, get you a piece of paper out. Here's my plan. Here are the equipment that I have. Weed eater, tractor, whatever. All right. Here's my process. This is what we're going to do. This particular day, we're going to do all of this, and we're going to get all of this particular done. The next day, let's get all of this done. If you don't have, and like you mentioned, time, for me still, it's the most important thing. It's not even the cost of everything that's out there, and even though that's a pretty great cost, but it's time. Everybody's time is so important. Like you said, you're there for a certain amount of time, so you need to be able to get it done as quick as you can. You need to get all your ducks in a row. For an example, part of that planning is making sure your equipment's ready to go. I mean, so many times you got weekend warriors. All right, we finna go plant food plots. I hadn't been on the tractor in 8 months, and you get on the tractor and something's wrong with the tractor. Something's wrong with the equipment. There's a pin out. The bearings are out. There's flat tire. So then you spend an entire day fixing equipment, and you've lost a day of planning. So all of that, and this may be very remedial to be able to say this, but it is important because I've been there and I've had to deal with, because stuff's going to happen anyway when everything is correct. So part of that planning process is making sure all your equipment's ready to go, making sure that you got your seed all ready. And I always tell people, buy your seed early so you have it. So when you get ready, maybe a rain's coming or whatever, you can get it in the ground. So go ahead and put it in the barn, put it in the shed. It's fine. It ain't going to hurt anything. Have your fertilizer ready. Have everything ready. All of that's part of the planning process. And whatever you need to do to plan it out and make it right, make a plan is what I'm getting at. So that will help tremendously. So you made a great point. Time is of the essence and very important.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize enough, based on our trial and error, that at the end of the day, having a plan.
Yep.
It's not going to go perfectly.
No.
But having a plan makes it a lot more organized process and easier to accomplish the task at hand.
Absolutely.
Even then, our plan literally just changed. That new piece, we have at least 10 acres, and it was growing up. We don't have time to bush hog this, that, and the other, so we made a deal with the neighbor. They went over, cut it for hay 2 days ago, baled it and took it off yesterday. So now we've got, you've seen when they cut a field for hay, it looks like a golf course. So now I'm like, well, that just saved me a bunch of time. How's my plan going to adjust here now for planting fall food plots? So I think what I've come to the conclusion of is I'm going to spray. Well, he's going to spray because he'll be here next weekend and I won't, but spray the fields we're going to plant in fall food plots, spray them with clethodim and butirac instead of glyphosate, because that way we got natural clover in the seed bank. Any clover that comes up, I'm fine with, but then we're going to go through with that no-till drill and put our fall food plot blends in, and then because they're annuals, when they're done at the end of this winter, that clover will start popping back up in that plot. I don't have to worry about something I got to frost seed as heavily this winter.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great plan. It worked out really well for you guys, and that is a method. If you got some big enough fields, we've done it here before. If you got some hay guys, man, they'll love to take that hay from you. So there's all kind of little nifty things that you can do that can definitely help your process along the way.
Well, I think that was a pleasant surprise. They covered more ground than we had even hoped, which was to our benefit. And,
great.
The other thing I would say that's been successful for us, I'd like your input, is, one thing we do, and you don't have to have as much of a plan, is doing the frost seeding of the clover. And it seems to be pretty effective, at least in our part of Kentucky.
Oh, absolutely. And that's more of a spring-ish kind of summer-ish kind of preparation. But frost seeding works great. It doesn't work at all or very little here in the South because we have such a short growing window during that particular time frame. However, it can still work here in the South. But that frost, any clover that's put in the ground in the South, I tell guys, go ahead and do it in January, February. That clover's going to sit there. It's fine until conditions get right to grow. So if you're going to do it, the earlier you can do it, the better, depending on what your growing seasons is. But no, it works great, especially from, say, Nashville, Tennessee north. Frost seeding works really well.
Yeah. All right, so we're talking about a plan here, right?
Yep.
Let me ask you this. When it comes to a plan, how are you planning which types of plants to put in the ground and why? Because look, you're going to have some stuff that the deer prefer earlier, some stuff they prefer later. I guess at the end of the day, you're probably going to agree with me in saying, what's your goal with it for this? Is it to give the deer food in the winter? Is it to have, we'll call it a kill plot that is highly palatable that they like during deer season? You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, that's a loaded question.
They're all loaded questions.
100%. Well, personally for me, on a lot of my food plots, it really comes down to two different seed types that I'm going to plant. regardless what the situation is. All right. One, I don't do little kill plots, so personally I'm out on that. But even if I did do a kill plot, it would still fall into the two different blends that I'm going to use. So in those two blends, I use our Tecumseh Greenfield blend, which is wheat, oats, triticale, or rye, that kind of thing, basically cereal rye or cereal grains, and that's in that mix, and that's very core to that mix. And Greenfield has some clover in it, but it has a lot of brassicas in it. So if you want a brassica type product, I don't do straight brassicas. I never do straight brassicas. I don't like doing straight brassicas, but I want to blend with brassicas in it. The reason why is if you do straight brassicas, there's only certain times that they're going to come to that food plot. And I want to blend with brassicas so there can deer come to it all the time. And but still all those brassicas are there, so if you get really, really cold weather or whatever, when those deer are really coming to the brassicas, I have a plot with a lot of brassicas in it. So if you want to go the brassica side of things, a heavy tonnage food plot, let's just say that would be Greenfield. I don't care if it's a little small food plot for a kill plot or whatever, I'll put in, the Greenfield blend. So the next blend, and I'm going to put both of these on the property. The next blend that I do is Maxatrack. It's the same thing. It is all of those cereal grains, but it has a lot more clover in it. It has both perennial clover and annual clover that's in there. So that particular blend, and a lot of times I'll add monster mix to that, which is more clover and chicory, more perennial type stuff. So that way you have a food plot that deer are going to eat in all year, but it's going to take you into the spring and summer as well. So I got two different things going on in there. I have a food plot that's high tonnage primarily for the fall and winter. That's Greenfield. Maxatrack, they're going to love it during the fall and winter also, but you got different varieties in there, but it will also take you into the spring and summer. I'm a big turkey hunter. I know Clayton's a big turkey hunter. So even when I'm planning for deer, I'm thinking about turkeys as well. And most of the time, the best way to do that is during the fall. So it's hard to plant a turkey food plot during the spring. It just is. Now, you can do some frost seeding or whatever, but even when you frost seed, especially here, it's not going to do well until, half a turkey season's over before it's really, blowing and going. So that's my technique. It's very, very basic. Those major blends, Maxatrack and Greenfield, just use them ever how you need to use them in whatever size plots that you have.
Well, and I think before we dive any further into anything, as a part of that plan and what we're talking about here, like I've decided, hey, when we put these fall food plots in, we're going to put in whatever we want in the spring. Like if it's not if it doesn't have a bunch of the perennial clovers in it, like the alpha, what is it, the alpha feast? Is that correct?
Right, with alfalfa in it.
Yeah, put some of that in when we're putting the fall stuff in the ground. That way, the spring we don't have to worry about it as much. So you're literally planning 6 months, not planting, but I guess you're doing both planning and planting 6 months ahead.
Absolutely.
Of schedule, essentially. So it's less work you got to worry about in the spring. Like especially this spring for us in Kentucky, there's so much rain. I mean, it turned into a rainforest. Farmers couldn't get crops into the ground until June.
Well, it hasn't helped us much this summer either. That's why they're just getting around to bush hogging.
Yeah.
No. So it was the same thing, with us. I mean, like I said, I had to rent a drill because there was no way for me to disc it, and I almost got stuck even pulling that drill in July. That's how wet it was. And I'm like, okay, I got this week to get it in or it ain't happening. So I went and rented the drill and did that process. And that's the cool thing, too. I will mention this. If people want to use a drill, most all of the state extensions, NRCS or whatever, there's like this local extension service that I know in the state of Mississippi, every county or every other county has this drill that you can rent. But even there's feed stores and things like that now that will have these. So definitely reach out, and it's usually very cost effective to do so. So I'll throw that little caveat in there, and ever how you want to use that, you go with it from there. But, planning fall food plots is not as complicated so many times as we make them out to be. And planting during the fall is much easier than the summertime because you don't have the crazy invasive weeds that you have to deal with. That's the biggest advantage in planting during the fall. So during the summertime, you're going to have those weeds, and they're aggravating to deal with. So don't try to make it complicated. I mean, Tecumseh seed, we have every kind of seed blend and seed varieties that you can think of. I don't know how many SKUs that we have, and it's a lot of them. But I try to make it as simple as you can. Again, going back to just Greenfield and MaxAttract. Those two blends give you everything you need. If you want to do, let's just say this. I know, Clayton, you mentioned planting during the fall and planting for the summer. If you take MaxAttract and add Monster Mix to it, watch this, and you're only planting one big food plot. Let's just say an acre food plot. All right, so you plant that in MaxAttract and you add a little Monster Mix to that. So then you have a great fall food plot. Then you come in early spring, and just like you mentioned earlier, you spray clethodim over the top of that, and that's going to kill any grasses. It's going to terminate even the grains and things that are in that. But guess what's going to explode? All of that clover is just going to just start coming out of the ground. And then you've just established a food plot for the entire spring and summer, planting it during the fall. And then you don't touch it. So that helps tremendously. So that's just why I'm saying there's so many different ways with just these two blends if you want to add a little something to it to go from there. So even if I'm planting, let me just say this, even if I want to establish a perennial food plot, and Monster Mix is our biggest one because it has a lot of different varieties, or if you just want straight white clover, our King Ladino white clover, even if I'm going to establish a King Ladino white clover plot, I'm going to mix it with MaxAttract during the fall. Because if I just do that clover, you're not going to see much growth. People are upset about it because clover takes a long time to grow. And you'll see it during the spring, but you won't see much of it during the fall. So I'm going to mix my clover, whatever clover that you want, in with the MaxAttract because there's a lot of clover there. You're going to get some utilization out of that all during the fall because of everything that's going on. And those other plants help shield the clover. They don't put as much pressure on the clover. So come spring, it blows up. Spray it with the clethodim. You have a perennial food plot. And just doing these little techniques makes life so much easier.
And to that point, is it helpful being further north in Kentucky if we do frost seed some clover over the course of the winter?
Sure, absolutely. So, and you could even do that technique. If you used MaxAttract, for an example, and then go over the top of it with you could actually go over the top of any of the food plots with any of the clover if you're frost seeding.
Yeah, and I keep coming back to that because, at least from my perspective, again, falling in the category of a weekend warrior, that takes the least amount of planning and is the easiest to do. All I need is a hand seeder and some clover seed. And I might be walking for an hour or so, but
yeah, I was gonna say you forgot about having a good pair of boots.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Now, when you do that, Mark, if you're mixing your spring planting in with your fall stuff, when you put it in the ground in the fall, does that change your seed rate? Do you, like, let's say it's 1 acre to make it easy. Do you put 1 acre worth of the King Ladino in with 1 acre's worth of the MaxAttract? Or do you do a half acre of each to equal up to 1 acre?
No, I just put it all in together. You just mix it all up together. It really doesn't matter. Listen, as long as that seed is in contact with the soil, I don't care what the preferred depth is, it's going to grow. So, and to me, the very best equipment that you could ever buy is a cultipacker. I don't care if it's a homemade rig, one you buy at Tractor Supply or whatever, but a cultipacker is the reason why is you get seed to soil contact. So that's what I try to tell everybody. If you're going to spend some money on a piece of equipment, find a cultipacker. So if you got that soil dished up well, run a cultipacker over it first. That's going to knock clods down. That's going to level everything out. Put your seed out, then run that cultipacker over it again, especially during the fall. Now, spring is a little different. If you're planting soybeans or lab, you need to get that seed in the ground to have better germination. Now, you can still do it. You can still have pretty good germination just running a cultipacker over it. But for any of the fall plants that are out there, from the wheat to oats to clover to whatever, brassicas, whatever you're planting, I'm not really worried about seed depth. I'm worried about soil to seed contact. So you can throw it out on top of the ground, run that cultipacker over, and it's going to push it down into the soil. It's going to grow. It's going to shoot up out of the ground and grow.
Yeah. Now, with the drill, you don't have to worry about that because generally the cultipacker is built in.
Sure. So with the drill, and there's more and more people using drills, and hey, y'all start digging around and doing some research and try to rent you one, because I rented one for the weekend. It was $150.
We did the same.
$150,
$150.
Well, and I think the other thing people need to realize you can use your pickup truck to pull it.
So you possibly can if you can get in the field. Now I couldn't. I'd have sunk it to the
I think
just when you pick it up from the co-op or 100% office, you just run down with your pickup truck or anything that has a hitch. You could pull it back and then hook it up to the tractor.
100%. I have seen them pulled behind and planted with the truck before in Texas. That's why I said that. I don't advise that, but it is possible to do. You have to do a little rigging to be able to do that, to drop that thing down. But no, all the ones that you rent are designed for that. They're all hydraulic, so you have to have a tractor with hydraulics to run it. So that's the only caveat. If your tractor don't have hydraulics, you can't run it. Because it raises and lowers with hydraulics. All the ones you rent, because they're designed for you to pull up with your pickup truck, hook it up, drop a pin in it, and take off with it. That's what they're designed for. Now, there are models that are made that are 3-point hitch models. So usually you don't rent those because they're a lot easier to move around, because you're not going to go up there to the ag extension office with your tractor and hook it up. But anyway, just saying that. So, but when you're doing a drill, let me just talk about some drill stuff. Most of the drills now that you get have 2 boxes. They have a large seed box and a small seed box. So if I'm drilling that same process that I was talking about, Max-Attract and clover or Monster Mix or whatever perennial seed, when you're talking clover seed, it's really, really little seed, So I'll drop the Max-Attract in, or sometimes I'll just do straight oats. And we have a great, winter forage oat that I love to do, and a lot of times I'll just do straight oats, and then I'll put Monster Mix in the small seed box. So you set the seed depth for your oats, or your seed rate for your oats, and then you set a different seed rate for your clover seed that's in that smaller box. So if you see that those 2 boxes, that's what it's for. One's for little seed, the other's for bigger seed.
Now, what about the planting depth? Because, you pretty much get one planting depth because you got 2 boxes, right? If you're looking at it from the side, you got 2 boxes, and both tubes go down to the same slit in the drill. At least the one we used, it looked like.
Well, what happens is
cutting depth.
Okay, so what happens? Your cutting depth, your bigger seed is going through that furrow into that. The small seed box is actually dropping it right on top, so it's dropping it right on top of the ground. It's not dropping it all the way down in there. So it's right on top. It may be right on top of the slit or right near the slit, but it's going to drop it on top. It's not actually putting it down in the furrow. But there's a way, those little rollers that are on the back, that's where you adjust your seeding depth. You can, essentially, there's a T-handle typically, and then you pull it all the way back or all the way forward to adjust seed depth. That's how you adjust the depth on the back of that. So, and all of them are different, but most of the ones that are out there that have that roller wheel that's on the back, it has an adjustment on it, and essentially that wheel can come up. It has essentially a spring or a lift that comes up, and that T-handle adjusts as that. So all the way up or all the way back will adjust that wheel to whatever seed depth that you want it for. And on fall food plot stuff, I just want it barely going into the ground.
Even the oats and wheat?
Even oats and wheat, it doesn't matter.
So you
They'll
just put
grow.
it on, yeah.
They'll
okay.
grow. 100%.
That was my next question because, like, obviously, that smaller seed
Yep.
for fall food plots like turnips, the brassicas, you want that pretty shallow.
You want it as shallow as you can. So whatever the shallowest setting is, set it for that shallow setting and let it rip. And a lot of people complain about that. Well, oats has a seed depth of a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Let me just tell you, you put oats on top of the ground, get it on contact with the soil, it'll grow every single time. So as long as it has seed to soil contact, it's going to grow.
Cool.
Yep.
So we're thinking right then.
That's right. It's not complicated. Fall food plots are so much easier than summer food plots, mainly because of the weeds and because of seeding depth. To get, consistent germination for soybeans, for lab, for corn, for any of these type summer plants, you got to get them in the ground consistently to be able to get that consistent thing. Plus, you have all the weeds that just constantly keep coming. I don't care what you spray it with, that you're constantly dealing with, and that's just part of the process. The fall, not so much. And a lot of folks try to get way nitpicky and want to plant this little thing here and this little thing here. I want to plant brassicas here and this and here. Man, make it simple. Use some of these blended products. It's a fall food plot. And plus, I like the blended products because deer like variety. And certain times of the year, they want this. Certain times of the year, they want that. I want them coming to that food plot all the time to get what they need. It just makes a huge difference.
I think the big thing in the fall for us has been planting at a time when we get rain not long thereafter.
Yeah.
Because there have been some years we planted around Labor Day, and it seems like for 3 weeks to a month, it's just dry.
Yep.
And that's not helpful at all.
Well, I think the seed drill does kind of help combat that a little bit because you're not turning the dirt up and releasing all the moisture and it drying out. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, true, 100%. That's the greatest advantage of a drill is it's whatever moisture's there, it's going to be there. And when you drill it, it's a whole lot harder for the turkeys to go scratch it up and the birds and everything else. Because, look, I've planted fall food plots before where turkeys ate everything, all the grains, and then only thing that I had grow was the clover, the chicory, or the brassicas or whatever. That, again, that's why having a blend helps. So all kind of crazy things is liable to happen. But what I always try to do, it's part of my planning, I'm going to have everything ready to plant. So maybe you go ahead and do a good disking and go ahead and put the fertilizer. See, if the fertilizer is in the soil already, it's fine. It ain't going anywhere. You're not going to get wash off. That's another reason when you put fertilizer on top of the ground, a lot of it will wash off. You get a big rain and it just washes off before, you get it going good. So go ahead and disc. It can be as dry as a bone. Disc it up. Get it ready, get the fertilizer ready, go ahead and run a cultipacker or a drag over it one time, where the next step, all you got to do is put the seed out, got a great rain event that's coming, then get out in front of it and do it. And that's a great way to do it in the fall. That's typically the way we try to do it. I have all the hard labor done, and I'm not going to put that seed in the ground until I know there's a good chance. But here's the thing, too. If you drill it, it really doesn't matter. That seed's going to sit there in that soil, Now, here's the only thing. If you drill it and there is soil moisture there, and you don't rain, and that plant does germinate, and it dries up and dies, once it's dead, it's dead. There ain't no bringing it back to life. That is the only caveat in drilling it too early without a good rainfall that's coming. So kind of keep that in mind as well, even with the drill. So, but if you got really, really, really good moisture, it's amazing when you don't disc how much moisture stays in that soil. So most of the time, if you drill it, if you're drilling in early September, I don't see you having a problem if you got good seed moisture and it does germinate. It may not grow very well unless it's just crazy hot and crazy dry and it kills it out. Then you may have to replant. But for the most part, you should be fine. Most of the time, you're fine. Most of the time, that what we've seen, you'll be good.
Well, and one of the things in your process there that's important to note as well is there are less steps to the process when you drill.
Sure it is. Absolutely.
Because we used to do, the rotivating and cultipacking, and sometimes we'd have to have two tractors going at one time and following each other and yada yada yada.
Absolutely.
With the drill, you don't have to do all that.
No, you really don't. I mean, it cuts the process of planting down tremendously if you can get a drill. But again, most people don't have a drill or don't have access to a drill. But that's why I was telling people, hey, look, see if you can rent one. I mean, find a buddy that's got one. Reach out to a farmer that may have one. You could pay him a little money to go plant it for you. Whatever, or at least borrow it or whatever. But I'm just saying, try to find a drill. And if you can't find a drill, then go back to your normal process. But the steps are much easier. Definitely much easier. So essentially spraying, maybe a clipping, and then you're just waiting to go, so.
Yep. Now, let me ask you this. So last podcast, I asked you about clearing off spots. Like you get a new farm, you want to clear off spots for a food plot. We fall into this category currently, but I want to ask it because guys do that. They clear out spots that have trees or timber or whatever so they can plant food plots. Got it cleared out. I got most of the stumps plucked out, but there's some like roots remaining on the ground, like just laying on top, some rocks, and there's a hard pack there on the dirt from the equipment that was used to clear it off. What would your process be to get that taken care of, to get it in food plot shape? I mean, there's some weeds in it, but it's because when it was cleared off, there's still a lot of dirt that's exposed, and there's obviously some holes from where the root wads used to be. I was thinking get the rocks cleaned out and all that, and then you go through with a rotavator and just scratch the top to help kind of fill in those holes a little bit, then cultipack seed, cultipack. Or you could you go with the method of, hey, it is what it is right now. We can't get to it till next year. Let's just spread some seed on it because there is a lot of bare dirt still, and then just try to cultipack that seed and then deal with it next year. I mean, how would you go about that?
Well, a couple different ways. One, at least, and I wouldn't even worry about a cultipacker because there's a lot of uneven stuff that you're running over in that particular case. If there's exposed dirt, maybe take a drag of some kind first. Run over everything the best way you can with a drag. And when I say drag, I mean it could be a Hera of some kind that you drag, or it could be a big old cedar top that you're dragging. So whatever level of drag that you have, drag over everything first. That's going to help level out things some and expose some more dirt. Then put the seed out and then run that drag over it again. And I think you'll be fine. If at minimum you can do that. So, and I've done that before on clearing things out. You've got sunlight coming down. You just got some spots that needs to be leveled out a little bit. You got some bare dirt there that you want to get, something established. So if you could at least do that, you'll be well ahead of the game. Instead of just throwing it out on top of the ground, you'll get much better germination if you'll drag it once, seed out, drag it again.
And I appreciate your time, Mark and Clayton, but I've got to drop. I'll let you handle it from here.
Yeah.
Hey, great meeting you, John.
Great meeting you, Mark. Good luck this season.
Yes, sir. You too.
Cheers.
Yeah, he's got a real job, Mark.
Oh, wow. I don't know what that is.
Me either. So my next question for you, do you try to plant everything at the same time, or like I've done it before with oats specifically, forage oats, where like I'll plant some and then I'll wait 2 or 3 weeks and plant another section next to it, and they kind of mature at a different time. Have you ever done that? Do you see value in it?
I don't, because again, that's time. That's time on the farm. And most guys just need to get it done get everything done while they have, everything there and ready to go. And the only time I would do something like that, the cool thing about, I will mention this, the cool thing about a good quality forage oat, you can plant that much later in the growing season. Whatever your growing season is from the south to the north, oats is like, a good quality forage winter oat. I mean, they'll germinate and grow. I mean, I've seen them, we've planted them, had to do some replants in November and not get rain until late November, and they come out of the ground in December. So having oats as a backup is always a good thing, and you can plant them much later. But as far as planting food plots at different times, I usually don't. Now, the technique with that is if you like brassicas, and deer do really well in brassicas, you want to plant brassicas typically earlier than anything else. So if you wanted just a brassica food plot, you want to plant that earlier because they do take longer to establish. If you want tonnage, if you want big bulbs and big tops, you got to plant brassicas early. Kentucky, if you want some really big brassicas, you better get them in August. In Mississippi, we want to plant those earlier in September if you really want the big ones. So now you can still have a good brassica food plot, planting them later, that just the bulbs don't get as big and the tops don't get as big. That's with the turnips, radishes, whatever brassica that you're using. The earlier you can get them in the ground, the bigger and the more tonnage that they'll make.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. Kentucky, you know where we're at. For anyone that's listening, it's northern Kentucky. It's literally almost southern Ohio. You see on the back of a bag when you buy seed, it gives you a window based on your zone. If the zones are 1 is very far north and it goes 2, 3, 4, I believe. We're, I think, the top of zone 2, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, let's say that says beginning of August or it says August to October. Would you say the end of August, early September, where we're at in Kentucky, is kind of that middle of the window, which is a good time if you're planting a mixture to kind of hit the right window for all the seeds in said blend?
Absolutely. You hit it. You hit the nail on the head. So those seed zones are just they're suggestions. There ain't nothing exact. There's nothing exact when it comes to food plot planting anyway. There's nothing exact when it comes to wildlife management in general. That just gives you some general times. Okay, this is the earliest you can do something. This is the latest you can do something on average. Does that not mean that you can plant something a little bit earlier? No. Does that not mean you can plant something a little bit later? No, because it all depends on weather, rain, and all those particular conditions. But they're just a good shooting point that you can make your plan with, like you mentioned.
Now, let me ask you this.
Okay.
We talked about rain, kind of waiting for rain. Let's talk about using a seed drill versus the other methods.
Okay, sure.
From the time you put seed into the ground to the time that first rain occurs, what's kind of your time frame there you're looking for? Like, when is it stretching it too much between seed in the ground and the first rain?
Sure. Well, it just depends on how hot and dry it gets. So, but most of the time, and it all depends on if it germinates or not. If that seed is in the ground and it doesn't germinate, understand this, that seed can sit there for a long time. It's fine. The seed's not going to rot. It's not going to go away. Some animal or something may eat it. But as long as it doesn't germinate, man, it can sit there for a couple months, for that matter. I mean, it can sit there for a long time. The only risk that you run is the idea of that seed germinating, and there's enough moisture there to allow it to germinate. And then if it gets hot and dry for a month and you don't get any rain and get some crazy hot temperatures, then it could terminate that seed. That's the only risk that you run. But typically, again, during the fall season, say in Kentucky, if you are planting in early September and there's good moisture there already, that seed starts to germinate, you should be fine because the nights are going to start getting cooler. You're going to get some dews at night to at least to allow those plants to survive until you get a good rain event. So, but let's just say a typical situation, I would like to at least see a rain event or have a rain event come in and get it in the ground about a week before that or a few days before that. So, but again, with the drill, I mean, it's really easy. All you got to do is plant. All you got to do is run that drill in there. So even if you have a drill, then you can run out and do it. But the only downfall, if you're renting it, then, hey, you have that time frame to use that drill, because if you wait to a rain event and then go try to drill it, everybody and their mama is already in line to be able to get it. But the idea is don't plant it too early. Like for you, you don't want to go plant early August, then you're taking a risk. So if you're first week in September, I think you'll be fine. You won't have any problem with that.
Yeah, and that was my next question, was the dew. Is that a myth, or does the dew actually help hold it
does.
over?
It actually does. It actually does. And then the temperatures at night help as well, because that produces more dew. It just cuts. You have some longer nights, and you have daylight. You have. Let me back up. So not only is that important, is the day length is important. So like right now, we still have long days. So there's more days that it's exposed to the hot, dry sun. As the winter progresses, you have shorter days and longer nights, so it's less exposed in that heat and that hot environment that'll dry it out. So I hope maybe that makes sense as well.
Yeah, for sure. So let's, I think we've covered planting, seed blends, fertilizer, bacteria, all that stuff a good bit. Let's talk a little bit about tactics here. So typically, if you own ground, right, or even if you're leasing and it's something you've leased for quite a few years and you're confident you'll have it, everyone says have a sanctuary for the deer. What are your thoughts on planting a food plot and, hey, like this big destination feed field, that's one of your sanctuaries for the deer?
Sure. And it all depends on how much acreage you got, how many people's hunting, all that kind of stuff. But if you could have a food plot that you never hunt, maybe until the last couple weeks of the season or something, somewhere that they can go to, maybe have a thicket and a food plot that you never touch, that they can go to, that's always good, because they feel comfortable. Killing a big white-tailed deer, the number one thing is always pressure. How much pressure is that animal getting? Not only that pressure will keep him off your property, but will, allow him to walk during daylight where you can harvest him. So having a food plot, for sure, if you have the acreage to just leave it alone, would be great. Put a cell camera in there with a solar panel on it, and just let it cook, and just don't go in there. That definitely helps. Most of the time, folks can't do that, though. So even when you're hunting food plots, be careful. Obviously be careful with the wind. But even with that, let me just mention this, and which is really cool, and a lot of the latest research from Mississippi State is showing this. We're about to air a show on bucks of Tecumseh either this coming week or next week. And I talked with a biologist there at Mississippi State, and a lot of the research is showing, it talks about a lot of different things, but I'm not going to get into it. But the best way to harvest a buck is try to get, not kill him in the food plot, but outside the food plot. And so get in between two food plots or whatever, so you're not putting pressure on the food plots. You're still harvest them going to the food plots, or a buck may not even go in that food plot till at night, but he's checking those food plots and he's walking. So that's a good way to harvest a deer, not put pressure on your food plot, but still kill a deer going to the food plot. So that's a pretty cool way of strategizing that as well. And the research shows that's the best way to do it, because they collared a bunch of deer. They had a lot of food plots that were there, and they were actually monitoring their activity during daylight hours, during huntable hours. And the best place to kill them is not in the food plot, but it's near the food plot, in some corridor, some, staging area or something to that effect.
Well, and let me ask you this. So in that regard, like, my farm is one that where we can put food plots, it was already predetermined when we got it, because the fields were already there, right? Well, the problem is to get to those spots that aren't in the food plot, a lot of times you have to figure out how to get past the food plot to get to that spot. So what would you say to people there? Build access to circumnavigate it? Yep. If you can't do that, would you tell them to walk the edge of it? Let's hit both sides of that, because people don't always have time to go and build an access route around it. Obviously, you're going to be at risk some walking through a food plot to get to your hunting spot. But what would you do there, just tactics-wise?
Well, that is part of the planning that's just as important as that food plot, is access to wherever you're hunting. So, and if you know your farm, then you might want to put more resources and more time in one particular year to be able to get to a particular place to hunt. So, I mean, I'm not going to accept the idea of, well, I don't have time to do that. I don't have money to do that. Well, you had money to plant the food plot. Well, then you got money to get an access road in there where you can hunt. We're talking long term. This is your farm, So if I have to sacrifice a food plot to be able to get into an area to hunt for future purposes, I'm fixing to do that. So a lot of the properties that we set up for Tecomate Properties, before the food plots are ever put in, Clayton, access roads are going in there. And then I'm going to put the food plot in, and I'm going to make sure I can get in and out of that particular food plot. And then I even look at the wind. What's the predominant wind that's coming into this food plot? And whatever that predominant wind is, you're always going to have some different things. Typically, I like to come in from the east, because anywhere in the country, you rarely get consistent east winds. So I'm going to come, because it's going to be something west, southwest, northwest, and I'm going to try to come in from the east, So, but whatever that predominant wind is, or at least from the south or the east, or even coming in from the north is okay. But something out of the east typically is what I want to set that up for. But regardless what the predominant wind is, set your access up for it. That access to the food plots may be more important than the food plot itself. Because if you spook him out of there, or if you got a buck coming in there and you try to run the risk of, well, I've got to hunt it, I only have this weekend to hunt it, he smells you, well, he ain't coming in that food plot again during daylight. So, but there's a lot of other ways. I mean, it depends too. Are you hunting with a bow? Are you hunting with a rifle? The coolest thing now in hunting, either with the bow or a rifle, is these blinds that you can completely enclose. I mean, it's really hot during early season, but it is death on a deer. I mean, it may be one of the greatest things ever and greatest tactics that people have been using just here recently, even archery hunting, is getting these blinds. You close everything up, and when that deer gets out there, ease that window open. You got about 15, 20 seconds, or he's finna smell you and go. But my goodness, it is death to a white-tailed deer doing it that way. But still, if you can't get to the blind, quietly and easily, I mean, try to do all of that's part of the planning. Where you put that blind, how you get to that blind is very, very important.
Well, access to stands in general, but especially around food plots, if it sounds crazy, like a crazy route or idea, it's probably the right one. For example, our farm, you pull in up top, all those destination feed fields are up top. I can dang near see 600 yards to where I'm going to hunt from where I park the truck. Yeah. Well, I can't just walk straight there. I got to walk all the way down the hill, up the creek, back up the hill into the back side of my stand in order to avoid walking through those destination feed fields, especially if you're hunting in the evening and when you get out, all those deer after dark going to be in those fields feeding.
Sure. Absolutely. It's just part of a plan. So if you don't have that this year, I don't know what to tell you. Whatever you need to do to get there that's going to be less evasive, that's what you've got to do. And it's not necessarily the food plot, it's where he's laying in the food plot. You don't want to walk through, you run your trail, your access point. Well, he's going to come out right here, and then you run your access point right through where he's living. Well, you don't want to do that either, So you just got to be strategic accessing that. And some of them are easy to do. Some of them are very, very difficult to do. So you just have to be creative and try to get in and out with less evasion as you possibly can.
Well, and that's a big part of it. Makes it harder for us is the hills. So walking downhill through a creek, up the hill, back up the hill into a stand in, say, September and October when all the leaves are on the trees still, fine, you can do that. He's not going to see you. You might cross his path, you don't know, because sometimes you don't know where he's bedding. You have an idea, but you don't know the exact spot. However, you wait till later in the season when there's no leaves on the trees, you can't do that anymore because he can be sitting up high, and if you're walking down low, he could still see you.
Right.
I had a deer doing that to me last year. I'm almost confident that's what happened. And in the same regard, depending on the time of year, depends on whether they're bedded high or low. It's so hot right now. If you got a big creek or a river bottom or something you're hunting, I can just about guarantee you that big deer is going to be bedded down low closer to that creek because it's about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than it is on top of those hills.
Sure.
Then when we hit September, October, they're going to move up and start bedding more on the top of the hills.
Right. Yep, all of that you have to factor into play, and then again, I think we talked about this last time. Habitat management is also important. Maybe there's some trees you need to remove out there to get some sunlight down, and I know you've already did some of that, and it makes a huge difference. So all of that plays into play, and and it's so different from hunting, say, the Midwest, which Kentucky's like that hybrid. It's got a Midwest effect, but a southern feel to it, So it's like that hybrid state that I call it. But in a lot of ways, it looks just like the Midwest. Depends on where you're at. You can go 5 miles down the road, and it looks just like the South, and then another 5 miles up the road, and it looks like Iowa, So Kentucky's very, very different, very diverse. Well, I love hunting Kentucky. But say in Mississippi, for an example, thickets aren't that a problem. It's the other way around. Having the openings are the problem. So it's whatever, managing what you don't have, creating what you don't have, managing, those particular things. So I'm trying to create more openings as much as I can in the South because we're heavy pine plantations, either the lease lands or the lands that people own because timber's money and all of those type things. So usually I have to make openings, as many openings as I can in management. That's what we're trying to do. And then as we're making those openings, we're constantly making roads. A lot of times we'll put the roads in first and then make the openings. If that's what we can do, that's what I want to do because access is important. It is the number one thing, even in the food plot world. So, but up there, a lot of times it's the opposite. You need more thickets. You need more cover, especially like you said, late winter. Man, you can just see forever out there. Everything's dead, up under all those trees. So creating more cover will definitely help and not only allow more deer to bed there, but it helps you to have more cover to be able to get in and out of your stand locations the thicker it is around you.
Yeah. So, and again, I mean, if you're strapped on any kind of resource, whether it's time or money, like we talked about before, part of your overall, not just food plot plan, but your overall plan for the farm is what don't I have that I need to create?
That's right.
Summer food is not one you generally need to create because there's so much browse. Winter food, however, could be a big one you have to create. So maybe you spend your time in the spring and summer getting other stuff ready, and then you worry about in the fall you get the food in the ground to have that they'll have in the winter.
Sure, and and it depends on where you're at. Again, depends on what your limiting factors are. A lot of places in Kentucky, there's going to be ag around. A lot of places in the Midwest, there's ag around. So, you don't have to focus on summer stuff as well. Again, that's where trying to get more perennial stuff going, or at least having perennial stuff in your fall food plot planning. If you just do it every year, as long as you got perennial stuff, you're going to give them food. And then the thing is, too, about perennial stuff, or at least having some in a food plot, they're constantly coming to that one food plot all the time. So you will see them more during the daylight, even during the wintertime, having that particular technique. However, during the summer here in Mississippi, where I'm at now on my farm, I've got to do summer stuff because there is a lot of browse here, but our browse goes to pot about June, early July. I mean, it's hot, it's dry, there's stuff there, but it's not really good for them to eat. So with that being said, I want to have some soybeans planted. I want to have some lab planted. I want to have some kind of summer forage. But I also have a lot of perennial stuff that I just maintain perennial things. And that's another thing that I want to hit on just a little bit because I'm starting to do that now is constantly keeping those perennial fields. So one particular big bottom that I have, it produces a lot of food. And half of that bottom is all perennial stuff. Right now it is all red and white clover. So, and there's a difference between these particular plants. They're both perennials. Actually, the red clover is actually classified as a biannual. So it'll come back. That plant will come back 2 years, but it's a prolific reseeder, so it comes back. It constantly comes back as well. So it's white clover, which is a straight perennial, and then I have the red clover that's in there. So that's one half of the field. The other half of the field, and it's another 5 or 6 acres, it's going to be planted in some kind of summer annual. Last year it was all soybeans. This year I was a little late getting it in. Like I said, I just planted it, so I used our Hornmaker mix there, and it has soybeans, sun hemp, and some other things in it also. So, but that's my heavy tonnage plot. So hopefully later on this particular month, deer's going to really start hitting it. Usually when that clover starts slowing down in Mississippi is sometime in July. It gets hot, it gets dry, and that clover starts slowing down. And that's when they really pick it up on the annuals. That's why you would do both in that particular situation. But you have to take care of the perennials, and that's a process that you have to do if you want to keep a good perennial food plot. You got to maintain it. And that's very important to do. So this particular field, Clayton, this is year 4 on this perennial food plot. So I planted it 4 years ago or so, and during the fall, did that technique that I talked about. I used Maxitract, and I think I put our Rack Up Red Clover in and our King Ladino Clover in that particular food plot because I wanted to establish a perennial. So that fall I did Maxitract, King Ladino White Clover, and Rack Up Red Clover. So then early spring I sprayed it with Clefidum, I sprayed it with 2,4-DB or Butarac, and I did that probably 2 or 3 different times throughout the course of the summer. Now it is a well-established perennial food plot. I'll clip it usually 1 time a year, sometimes 2 times a year. A lot of times people would clip it a whole lot more than that, but research shows don't clip it near as much. Let that stuff go, Only clip it when you have to. But still, that spraying process continues. I'll spray it. This year I've sprayed it twice already, and I'll spray it 1 more time. With all the rains and stuff we had, there was all kind of grass and stuff that kept constantly coming up. And then I will fertilize that at least 1 time a year, sometimes 2 times a year. But I'm just trying to tell you, maintaining a perennial food plot is great. And that helped save me this year because I wasn't able to get the soybeans in like I wanted to, but I had a lot of good-looking clover that was already established. So then what I'll do in that summer food plot, I will take Maxitract and Greenfield. I'll take both of those, and I'll just broadcast it in there with the standing summer stuff. And it's not a perfect scenario. I'll usually get about 50 to 60% germination. But as that stuff starts dying off after I get a frost or whatever, man, you just see that green stuff growing. So again, I constantly have ultimate tonnage in that particular field. So just throwing that at you as well. It's another technique that you can do.
Now, when you talk about maintaining the perennials, let me ask you something about a specific blend, the Alpha Feast. It's got the clover, the chicory, and the alfalfa. How do you maintain that one? Like, for example, we were thinking about when we put our fall food plots in, mixing that in with it. Just doing, like, if we're planting an acre, we'll do an acre of the Maxitract and then an acre of the Alpha Feast. Mm-hmm. That way it's there in the spring. But how do you maintain it? Because alfalfa is autotoxic, if I'm not mistaken. Like, how do you maintain that specific plot because of the alfalfa?
It's the same way. You just try to keep the grass out of it is the best way you can. Run that Clefidum through there. You can even spray Butarac through there, and it's not going to kill the alfalfa either. Now, Butarac will kill the chicory that's in there, and that's the only caveat there. There are some other products that you can use, like Imox and some other type selective products that you can use, but there are things on the market that you can keep it clean. Most of the time it's the grass that you have to deal with anyway. And if I can deal with the grass, a lot of those natural forbs that grow in that plot, they don't bother me that much if I can keep the grass killed out.
Now, what about mowing it? If you mow it with that alfalfa in there, is it going to kill off that alfalfa if you mow it and leave it lay?
I usually don't mow it. And you're talking an acre? No, deer's going to keep it mowed.
Yeah. Well, it'll ultimately be 3 or 4 acres combined, but yeah.
It's still not that much. The only time, if it gets crazy high, and I don't see it happening, you might want to mow the tops of them off just a little bit. And even when you're mowing alfalfa, clover, or anything, do not mow it less than 8 inches. Do not mow it less than 8 inches. Actually, I try to mow mine about 10 inches. All I'm trying to do, I don't even, maybe just cut the top out of them just a little bit, but mainly you're just trying to knock whatever weeds are growing up above that. That's what you're trying to mow. The more you mow it and the lower you mow it, the more stress that you're putting on those plants. Alfalfa, clover, whatever perennial during the summer, the lower you mow it, the more stress that you're putting on those plants, and you don't want to do that. That's what I'm saying. 8 inches is what I'm shooting for. So, and if you mow it, definitely not below 6. That's like the bare minimum you need to mow it down. So, as long as you got rainfall and everything, conditions are great, it bounces back fine. But during the spring and summer, you never know when it's going to hit that hot and dry spell, and then that's going to add stress to it. So, don't shoot for 8 inches. Don't mow below 8 inches, and you'll be fine.
Well, and it's one of those things like, so what if it doesn't look perfect? You're not worried about what it looks like. You're worried about the value it adds, right? Now, if it's waist high in weeds and it's choking everything out, yeah, you can see a little bit of clover down there, but it's not like a mostly full stand of clover. Yeah, then maybe you got to worry about it. But other than that, who cares what it looks like? Don't worry about the TV quality looking food plot. Just worry about, hey, there's plenty of food in here for these deer. Absolutely. It's fine.
Yeah, and I like to call them a trashy looking food plot. You know, and again, you'll see some forbs growing up in there. And the cool thing about forbs, now I want grass gone. I try to eliminate grass. I spray more clethodim probably than anybody else does in the whole state of Mississippi. I'll spray native stuff with clethodim. I want grass gone. I don't want any grass growing whatsoever anywhere. Spraying roads with grass, and when you get rid of grass, it's amazing how many native forbs that grow up. And these native forbs produce flowers. Well, what do those flowers attract? They attract bugs. And what do those bugs attract? It attracts turkeys, you know, and I want more turkeys. But also those forbs are great for deer to browse on. And a lot of times, these native forbs and native plants have a higher protein value or just as high protein value as the things that you're planting. Things like common ragweed, for an example. It has a high protein value, especially when it's young and initially growing, and deer love that. And there's several others that are that way as well. But grass is terrible, so get rid of the grass. Definitely do that. And if you got some other stuff growing in there, you still got plenty of clover, plenty of other stuff, and it may look a little trashy and a little nasty, but it's fine. Let her rip. Don't worry about it.
Yep. Especially to me, if you want to kill a deer early season in a state like Kentucky, outside of beans, dude, alfalfa and clover are killer.
They are. Now, we don't have any directly with Tecumseh seed, but we can definitely get you some if you want it indirectly, and that's Roundup Ready alfalfa, which is a great way to go as well. And we have several farms in Kentucky that we do Roundup Ready alfalfa that you can spray that and can keep them clean and look pristine. So if that is your issue and that's what you're worried about, then you may want to go that route. But I'm just trying to tell you, clover, alfalfa, regardless what that perennial is, if it doesn't look perfect. Now, I'm going to do some, Clayton, that looks perfect because somebody's got to take pictures and put things in brochures. So, and most of the time that's me, all right? So I'm going to have sections of my field that I can take you right now, and they ain't a grass stem. There's nothing but pure, beautiful clover, all right? But for the most part, I'm not doing that on all of them, you know. So I like to see those other little things growing up in it. And deer eat it too. When you go out and do those little browse surveys and you're looking at every single plant, man, you see the nipped ends on all those other things that you consider weeds and are ugly looking, but the deer are liking those too, and it's good for the animals.
Yeah, I'm more of, for my perennials, my stuff that they're browsing on spring and summer, I'm more of the trashy food plot guy.
Yeah.
Especially because it gives it shade, too. But, the fall stuff will look prettier, but that's just because you're planting it and killing stuff off when the weeds aren't really going to grow back. So.
Yep.
And on top of that, on that note, the trashy food plot, some of those weeds might get a little bit taller. That, depending on how thick it is, there's a point where it's a balance between thick and sparse.
Yep.
And then in that balance point, the deer feel more secure in it when they're out feeding, and they're more susceptible to come out in daylight in that scenario.
Right. Absolutely, they do. They like a little stuff. I mean, they like stuff that's about 4 foot high. I mean, they just feel comfortable in that, They can lay down in it and can be completely, you can't see them at all, but they just feel a little more comfortable in stuff like that. They definitely do.
Yep. So
cool.
All right, Mark. Well, I think that's about all I got, unless you got anything else you want to talk about.
Just want to recap some very simple things. In planning fall food plots, that's your easiest planning. Where people have issues is during the summer. And I get way more questions during the summer. Well, why is this not growing? What's going here? What kind of herbicide do I need to plant? There's more troubleshooting issues during the summertime than you're going to have during the fall. So a lot of times folks will plant during the summer, get frustrated because they didn't have a successful food plot. Well, don't quit. Don't quit. Now let's plant something during the fall. You're going to have more success. And then actually, if guys are only planting one food plot, plant it during the fall. Regardless when that fall plot planting is. There's a lot of guys up in New York and Pennsylvania, they're planting fall plots now. Already started planting fall food plots, because you can start planting so much earlier the further north that you go. So that's your best time to get the best efforts. And then I would say this, use these blends, all right? Max-Attract Greenfield. I'm not trying to sell Max-Attract Greenfield. I'm just telling you these two blends work. We have 30-something different food plot varieties that you could plant, all right?
You're trying to sell variety.
And it's easier. You're going to get, I don't care how bad a food plot farmer you are. I don't care how bad a food plot, I'm sorry, let me say that again. I don't care how bad a food plot farmer you are. You're going to get something to grow when you go with Greenfield and Max-Attract. And that's all you really need. And again, if you want to add something to that, feel free to do that, whatever you want to add to it. But these blends give you everything you need. They're specifically designed to give you success and also give you plants that the wildlife that you're targeting need. And if you put both of them on your property, you're in great shape. You don't need anything else. Max-Attract Greenfield. Go with those things. You'll have definitely better success this fall.
Okay, actually, that did bring up one more question I got for you. So if you're going to plant brassicas and you want the big bulbs, and you plant everything according to how you're supposed to in order to achieve that, how much does that affect it if you also mix in like the clover chicory mix with that? So if it's just say your King Ladino and your straight up brassica seed, and you mix those two together, do those bulbs kind of hurt the germination and everything of the clover? Does it help because the leaves on the brassicas get so big they provide the clover the shade it needs? What's the deal with that?
No, typically, when we put in Greenfield, we only put in some annual clovers, maybe a little bit of chicory, but it's very little that's in there because it will outcompete those clovers. If you're wanting to put in monster mix or put in more clover, you're not going to have the success in the clovers the more brassicas that you have. Look, brassicas will take over. So when you do a Greenfield blend, for an example, there's a lot of brassicas that are in there. And a little bit of brassica goes a long way. If you're planting an acre of brassicas, do not put over 8 pounds of straight brassica in that acre. Don't put over 8. Actually, I'd rather see you do 5 or 6 because you're going to get bigger bulbs. You're going to get taller plants. Now, also, the timing that you plant affects that as well. The later you plant those, the more you can put in there, and you can add some clover and some chicory, and you can have some success with that. But if you plant, say for an example, you guys in Kentucky will plant brassicas in, say, mid-August, which is a good time to plant brassicas there because that's when we planted this past year, and we had some giant radishes. I mean, they was as big as this cup. if not bigger and longer. It's unbelievable how big
I saw the pictures.
It was unbelievable. But if I had clover in there, they didn't do good at all because, I mean, good, you got that bulb and you had a bunch of them. There was very little space for the clover to grow in, is what I'm getting at. So I don't suggest doing a whole lot of clover. You can do some, and that Greenfield blend has some, but you don't want a lot because you want those brassicas to grow. That's why I'm saying you have the Maxitract, and then you have the Greenfield. I don't like blending them together. There's guys that do and have success with that, but most of the time they're planting those a little bit later in the year. Okay? So if you're planting brassicas early, don't put clover and stuff with them because you're not going to see anything out of them.
So you're saying the Maxitract is the one you put the clover and stuff in if you're planting for the spring, and the Greenfield is pretty much strictly just fall.
That's absolutely. Yep.
Perfect.
That's it. That is it. And that is important. On any brassicas, that is the only fall seed that you can overseed too much. Pretty much anything else. Let me throw this one in there. When it comes to clover, all right, Clayton, tell me what you normally would plant per acre with clover. Tell me what you would plant.
I don't even remember. I go back and look it up every year. What, 10 pounds an acre, 15?
10 pounds an acre is actually a lot. When you look at like white clover, the planting rate is about 4 to 6 pounds.
Oh, yeah, all right. Now you mention it, that makes more sense, yeah.
Okay, I plant 25. That's what I plant. So when I do monster mix, I'm planting 25 pounds to the acre. When I do the white clover, it's 20 to 25 pounds to the acre. I'm putting a lot of clover down, and here's the reason why. The thicker, if I'm doing straight perennial, the thicker I can make that clover, the less weeds and the less grass and the less competition that I'm going to have pop up in there. I do a lot. I know some guys that do up almost 50 pounds to the acre, which is insane. Now,
what about on a drill, though?
On a drill, it'd still be high. I'd still try to put 15 to 20.
You just got to make sure you turn that seed rate up on that drill.
You just turn that seed, pour it out in there.
Because I used that drill for the first time in a decade this spring, and I was like, man, I still got seed left. So I was just like, where can I put it?
Yep. Now that's the cool thing about a drill too. You're not gonna waste much seed at all. It's gonna put whatever rate you put it in for. That's the rate it's dropping, and you're not gonna lose anything to the sides or anything. You're not gonna get hot spots or anything like that. So, but I do a lot of clover when I'm doing clover. If that is all that I'm doing at a much higher rate than's needed. Mainly, I want a mat of clover or mat of chicory or whatever perennial that I'm doing, so it outcompetes anything else that's coming up. But and I said all of that, all the fall stuff. I don't care if it's Maxitract. You can plant 150 pounds to the acre if you want to. You'll be fine with that. Don't plant 150 pounds of Greenfield to the acre though, because there's so many brassicas in there. All you're going to see if you do it at that rate, it's just going to be all turnips. You're not going to see anything else. And it'll be so much turnips, you're not going to get the big bulbs, and they're going to start out competing each other, and then they'll start dying off. So anything with brassicas in it, be careful not to put too much. That's the biggest thing in fall food plots that you need to understand. Not the biggest thing, but it's an important thing. Don't do too much brassicas. Anything else, pour it to it if you want to.
Yep, and then I want to recap one more thing before we hop off here. So let's say you're taking Maxitract and you're planting it for this fall, and you're taking, let's just say Alpha Feast, and you're planting it for next spring. You got 1 acre. Mm-hmm. Do you do whatever the seeding rate is for an acre of Maxitract plus whatever the seeding rate is for an acre of Alpha Feast, or do you cut those in half because you're putting additional seed in the ground on top of it?
Okay, let's just back up. So, and you're wanting to put up both of them together in that plot? Yep, perfect. Okay, so, and I've done this exact same thing before. So when we're planting Maxitract and Alpha Feast together, I'm going to do about 40 pounds of Maxitract, and then I'm probably going to do about 15 pounds of Alpha Feast on that acre. Mix them all together, let them rip.
Perfect.
And you're going to have a beautiful food plot during the fall, and you're going to have a even better food plot come spring.
Awesome. Cool.
Yep. So that's exactly what I do there. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I think that's about all I got, Mark. I appreciate your time. We had about 50,000 internet troubles between you and Texas, me here.
Yep. So, but we had fun in Texas. Joshua got him a nice axis deer, and
did he? Good.
We had a fun trip, and nothing else major. We ended up getting the internet working there finally, but that was good. So I'm glad you got yours up and running, and I think you're still having issues, but hopefully you can get it going. But
yeah, and Mark's turning into a young buck on us with his new little camper van. He's got a Mercedes.
How about that? that thing was nice, I will say. And then just having that little unit, not having to worry about a hotel or something, man. I pulled up to a gas station, just jump back there and take a nap. Then I don't need a whole lot of sleep, and then just take off. So it was really nice to be able to do that. And then we went and camped. We didn't have to, but we did. We went and camped in a couple places. Joshua enjoyed that. Cooking outside, that was always cool. So building a campfire and all of that. So we had a good time. It was fun. So I look forward to using that. I've already had some comments from some of my turkey hunting buddies, and they're like, dude, they don't know how many turkeys that thing's fixing to kill. And I'm like, you're exactly right.
Well, I told you I used to be against the idea, but now as time goes on, I'm more and more like, man, that thing would be handy. Where'd you get that thing from?
That's from Tiffin.
Okay.
Tiffin Motorhomes.
I'm going to have to look at that.
They are, and a lot of people make them. Tiffin is just up the road from where I live. It's in Red Bay, Alabama, which is right on the Mississippi-Alabama line. It's like an hour and 20 minutes from my house. So I've heard about them for a long time. I just didn't know they made these particular units. And it's a nice rig. And they make some that's bigger. Actually had a meeting with them had a meeting with them this week. And we're trying to design more hunter-friendly models. So it's some cool stuff that's coming with gun cabinets and all kinds of things that we're talking about. So pretty neat.
That's cool. So for all you turkey hunters out there, that's your next weapon in your arsenal is one of those little motorhomes. Yep. You can drive it. It'll get you a pile of turkeys, and it makes it very convenient for you to, especially if you're going for the slam and you want to drive and not fly.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can shoot and scoot, buddy. Shoot and scoot.
You just go. You just got everything you need. Refrigerator, got a little kitchen area you can cook stuff with. So it's pretty neat. Bathroom, all of that's in that. All of that's in that rig. So it's pretty cool. This was called the GH1. They make a GH2. There's a couple other units that they make as well that's even bigger than that. That's designed for this kind of stuff, but. That's their Tiffin Adventure line. The Tiffin Motorhomes, that's these big, giant luxury motorhomes that are super nice. I mean, it's next level stuff the things that they make. But phenomenal company. I toured the whole entire facility. I think they employ 1,000 employees, something like that. And everything's hand-built. There's no robots in any of the machinery when they're building these things. It's all handmade from start to finish, which is pretty darn cool. So,
well, I mean, you know how it is. When you're that serious about hunting, whether it's turkey or deer like we are, you don't need a lot. You need the basic necessities as far as amenities are concerned. You're simply looking for functional, somewhere to sleep that's got AC or heat, somewhere to keep stuff cold, and somewhere to get cleaned up. And that's
Absolutely.
It don't need to be a fancy lodge or anything like that. Yeah, if you got one, great, use it. I would too. But especially if you're like hunting public ground, man, shoo.
That's all you need.
Saves you from sleeping in the tent.
No doubt. Or the truck. And the truck, I've done that, and it gets tough after a while.
Yeah, that's when you, at the end of the trip, you're walking like this.
Yeah, exactly. Been there. Done a lot of that. So, yep.
All right, Mark. Well, I appreciate it, buddy. I'm sure you got to do about the same I do right now. Get out and get some work done in the fields. So.
Absolutely. I got a little bit more spraying I need to do. I got some done yesterday. I got another field to spray here in a little bit, and I should be good to go until another, I don't know, couple months before I get the whole process starts again. So, anyway, it's been good. I love having all this rain. I complain about it, but, man, all the native stuff is in much better shape than ever. So, I can't complain too much, I guess.
Yep, I'm with you. So, all right, buddy. Well, I appreciate it. You have a good day, Mark.
Yeah, man. Thank you, sir. God bless.